Hello, everyone. I'm recording this today on Sunday morning, 12/24/23, what is commonly in the West referred to as Christmas Eve. Sometimes when I throw the Yijing that I learned from my teachers, I'm very reluctant to share it most of the time because I think that Yijing is a very in some ways, it's quite a personal practice. If you do it right, it is not some kind of like fluffy horoscope divination thing. It's not about telling the future. And yet, it has a great deal of wisdom in a very particular way that's different from tarot or other things which use images. This uses primarily words and markings and those kinds of symbols. I'm not going to go into every piece of information I know about how to throw the Yijing, and I'm not going to pretend that I am some great diviner, although I do practice it. So all that being said, I think that it's useful to just start with a recognition that what comes through me is particular to my life and my fate and my lived experience, and those who maybe benefit from that, they also have a different lived experience. And so I think in order to be able to talk this way through sort of channeling and divination, we have to sort of protect ourselves and each other from our own abilities to go into extreme magical thinking and a kind of salvationist mentality. So the image that I think is useful when you listen to this is think of, you know how you can buy those little crystal prisms that you hang in your window, and when the light shines through, they refract into kind of like rainbow colors. So just imagine for a second that there's many of those somewhere hanging at different heights and different sizes, many prisms or crystals. And then the light hits them. And as the light hits them, they start to turn from sort of clear light into various colors. And then those colors interact and refract through other crystals and other colors. So you have this kind of kaleidoscopic refraction. Don't understand. No worries. Whoever is doing that, you press the wrong button. It's fine. So you have this refraction multiplied over itself. If you can sit with that mysterious quality, that the appearances that we see superficially are sort of like multiplied refractions, downstream refractions from something that is quite clear and unified, then we can maybe understand divination a little bit better, and we can also understand each other. Because even though I look like this, right, I was born into this body in 1979, that's not who I actually am, or what I actually am, or how I actually am. It is temporarily an aspect of my incarnation. I'm in this shape. Okay, I'm in this shape with these conditions. And then this shape gets further refracted by social interactions and propaganda and structural violence and institutional violence and all of the various social programs that we run on each other and on ourselves. Okay? And then, 44 years of that, and now I'm going to try to do some divination today, or at least speak about the divination I already rolled or already threw the coins already. But in order to hear it properly, you have to understand that like nobody is technically the shape they're in, even if they strongly identify with that superficial appearance, or even if other people strongly make them act in a certain way based on their superficial appearance. And that doesn't mean the superficial appearance is wrong. It just is an aspect of what we're dealing with. And so the Yijing, as it sort of is translated here by my dead teacher Lu Ming, is an extremely tactical way to guide one's life as harmoniously as possible, whilst in the midst of a potentially extremely violent and disharmonious situation. And if you research the history of the Yijing, you'll see what I mean when I say that this was designed to carry out as bloodless a revolution as possible against oppressors. An oppressive, monotheistic, oligarchical society, the Shang dynasty. And so I think that its value, even a few thousand years after it was written and used, is still holds true because it's talking about post-agricultural, patriarchal, dominant society and how to be as animist as possible inside of that. Okay? So understand that this level of non-duality, which never bypasses duality, is the non-duality that I practice. It never bypasses duality, which is the appearances and the shapes that we are in, but it also does not get sucked into the fallacy that the duality is the truth. Okay, so you have to understand that at least a little bit before I get into the specifics of the divination. Okay, so this is 56 into 55 for people that want to read along in their own book. I'm reading from my teacher's book. I only use 2 different books. 90% of the time I just use my teacher's book, which you can get on Daiyuan Circle. It's called Zhouyi, the Heart of the Yijing. It's the yellow book, Changing. However, this is not about consumerism. I'm just trying to put it out there what I'm doing. So 56 is Lu, the Sojourner. This is like a lost traveler. This is a lost traveler who is trying to get back home after losing a war. Okay? You have to understand that this is this kind of, you're not traveling on vacation. Okay? You're lost. Or, at the very least, you are wandering. And you have no home to go to. You are a guest on the road, and the road is dangerous. And, to top it all off, you are a soldier on a side that lost the battle. Okay? So, what this tells you from the beginning is that it's auspicious for traveling. But remember, traveling is not vacationing. Traveling is like it used to be. Pretty risky. Pretty fucking risky. And it leads off with small offerings. Okay? So, in the method I use, the changing lines are the most important part of the divination. So the changing lines in this one are the first and the sixth, the bottom and the top, which I think as a symbolism is also interesting. The beginning and the end of the divination are changing. Okay, so that's just a symbolism you can kind of sink into. The beginnings is changing and the ends is changing, which leaves you with the middle, the long, hard, difficult middle. Okay? So the first changing line is the sojourner's deficiency brings mishap. Okay? So this is, you have not yet learned the rules of the road. And your own ignorance and remedialness will add hardship. Your anxiety will increase your sense of homelessness. Okay? So in this case, this kind of metaphorical or symbolic wanderer, this lost soldier trying to get back home, is very new at learning the rules of the road. Okay? So you have to understand when I roll this, when I say roll because I play a lot of games, but it's really throwing the coins. You have to understand that I do this sort of, and I say what's auspicious for the public to know, and what should I share and how should I share it, and that just means that the public is not everybody, 8 billion people on the planet. Not everyone's going to watch this. So it's more like a generalized wash of the public that I could have an impact on in a beneficial way. So think of it as a gestalt or an amalgam of a kind of cultural refraction. Again, that light I was talking about. The refraction of the light through the prisms that then refract onto other prisms. If each of us were sort of like one beam of light in all of those refractions, like we were like one piece of light in one color spectrum, then the divination is about zooming back and looking at the entire installation as a whole, right? So when I say you, and I mean like the traveler or the sojourner in this case, it's a kind of symbolic you. You can think of it as part of the soul or part of the plight that we're all going through on a particular kind of journey together. Okay? So clear that up a little bit. Right. So in this case, the lost soldier has not learned the rules of the road yet. And so their anxiety about not knowing the customs and what to do on the road is going to get them in more trouble and is going to put them in a state of high anxiety. And that high anxiety is kind of like the rumination of being lost. Because if you're lost but you're fine, you're not like freaking out about it, you can be okay, you can pay attention. However, if you are lost and you're freaking out and you really want to get home and you don't know how to get home and you're very scared, that's going to cause your perceptions to get really cloudy. And as your perceptions get cloudy, you're going to miss a lot of things that could cause you to get in more trouble. Okay? So that's the first line. The sojourner's deficiency brings mishap. You have not learned the rules of the road yet. So, and you can look at that as people waking up to imperial genocide as if it's happened for the first time. There's plenty of people, mostly white people, that somehow didn't know the world was like this. And so they're kind of lost and freaking out all the time now because it's just on blast, as it should be. And people are like, how do I get back home? Now, if you think about that in a way that's, there's two ways to think about that. We can get back home in a way that is actually about everyone getting back home to the earth. Or we can become extremely tribalistic about it and think about how do I get back home to what's mine? And how do I get back to normal? Because I think that's home. And I think this is where the lost soldier that is being talked about as a metaphor in this hexagram, that's where they're going to cause the most harm, because they think there is a place called home after this war. And I think when we exist now, thousands of years after this was written, it's endless war. So where is home in endless war? That's a big question. And that's sort of like going to hang in the air on our travels. The sixth line, which is the second line that changes in this hexagram for today, is the crow's nest is burned, the ox is lost in the field, first laughter, then tears, misfortune. Your reduced circumstances are painful. Okay, let's just take it as is. You feel, it's painful to lose what you think you had. It's painful to sort of have reduced efficacy. It's painful to have your circumstances be reduced. Okay? So, continues on saying, the life of a wanderer is full of loss and more loss. It is courageously laughed off at first, but later you weep. Okay, so this is a pretty inauspicious hexagram in general. This hexagram in general, pretty fucking auspicious, because the auspices, or the sort of the way this is that like people seem to operate better when they're surrounded by their community. Okay, when they're surrounded by the people that care about them in a family kind of way, in a village, in a tribal kind of thing. And that is not what a lot of us have anymore. Okay? So one could say that for over 500 years, many of our people have been continually inside of this, a version of this unfortunate hexagram, displaced in a diaspora and trying to make the best of it, okay? What do they say we have to do when we're in this hexagram? Because this is not merely some pontification about something. It's a tactical manual. And so they tend to state that along the way, you must consistently pay attention to the customs of the place that you're in. You must be a good guest, right? Try to be a good guest on your road back home. And along the way, constantly making small offerings and divinations. Okay? Because this road is so difficult and so risky and so dangerous that there is no fucking way that your intuition or your opinions are going to get you back home. Okay? So this idea that all of us are just somehow magical, prophetic, starseed children who know things, and this is cockamamie nonsense, okay? Even the best mediums in the ancient world had to be trained from youth to be useful, okay? So this cockamamie that you can somehow just be special is really kind of idiotic. And it speaks to our homelessness, right? That because we're so fucking homeless, we cling to magical thinking and believe that our intuition and our opinions and our preferences are the compass by which we should continually make choices. And I'm not saying they aren't part of that. I'm just saying they're not the whole story, and they're also quite biased, right? There's quite of a bias. Our karma and our fate affects our intuition. Our ancestors affect our intuition, the good ones and the bad ones, the shitty ones and the healed ones, they all affect it. And also our sicknesses affect it, our traumas, our illnesses, our food supply, all of that affects our intuition. So this idea that our fucking intuition is somehow this like magical creature that is, able to like completely tell us exactly what's going on is like really ill-informed. Our intuition gives us some information that we should take into account, for sure. We have defense mechanisms, for sure. But this idea that we know what really we should do is total nonsense. And I wish that it were true because it would be so much fun to feel like I was a superhero. But I'm not a superhero, and likely neither are you. Okay. So we try to use wisdom that's been accrued over generations and channeled over generations and tested over generations to try to help us refine our intuition so that our intuition is not just this like petulant child running around pretending it knows everything that it needs to know, when really it just has some feelings. I mean, it has some feelings, and then that's just part of what we deal with, okay? So, right, so the auspices are favorable for small accomplishments and temporary appeasement, but they're inauspicious generally, and discretion is vital in whatever you do. So as people are maybe traveling around to the holidays, you might go home and feel like it's not really home. This applies to you too. This applies to everybody that has this feeling of being on an uneven road of fate, where they're thrust into some kind of journey that is maybe quasi-spiritual, but really it's a very physical, animalistic issue. Trying to get back to some place that feels safe, and we're not really there yet. So we have to make the best of it along the way. Every hotel we stop at, every place that we go along the way, we have to make sure things are copacetic in some way. How safe is it here? What are the customs? What are the people doing here? What's the land like? What's the weather like? What's happening today in this place? So as you go travel, maybe back to your family or to another place where you have found family or whatever, I think this still holds true. Small offerings along the way. And that could be as simple as you're maybe eating a lot of really rich and yummy foods. Make a plate first for the spirits of the land and the ancestors. They can be separate plates, they can be the same plate, I don't really care. They can be a glass of water, it can be a shot of whiskey. But set aside something for the spirits of the place that you're in. Set aside something for the spirits of the restless dead that are wandering around everywhere. You don't have to make a big deal out of it. You don't have to fucking tell anybody what the hell you're doing. Make a small plate, put it outside, maybe. Pour it on the ground, maybe. Or just leave it somewhere with a candle burning next to it. If someone asks you what to do, say, oh, don't worry about it. It's like an art project. Or you can tell them the truth and say, I'm trying something new. It's my own superstition. It's for the ancestors. Don't even worry about it. Okay? Regardless, some of you aren't even going to be able to say that to the people that you're around, so you have to do it in secret, but you should still fucking do it. Small offerings along the way. Constantly small offerings along the way. It can be so simple. Glass of water every day, poured into the ground after you pray in it. A date. Like a little Deglet Newer date or some medjool date or something. Something that means something. That like maybe a piece of dried fruit or a glass of water, or stick of burning incense, or some rice. There's plenty of things. You don't have to get so crazy about it. I think that people get really crazy about these things, and I think that unless you're really trying to be a priest, you should. You can just be basic. You don't have to be so crazy about it. But the fact that you do it, and that you spend some time actually aligning with it and putting your chi into it and actually saying, I want you to be well, and I want to be well while I'm here passing through. It's a transaction on some level, and it's okay to do that. It's okay to say, hey, I'm just a wanderer here, and I'd like it so that I get home safe, whatever that means to you. And I think during this time when people are traveling all over the world to see family and practicing this colonial horseshit thing called Christmas, while Palestine is just completely fucking demolished, and all the hypocrisy of that, the complete and total dissociative hypocrisy of all of this. I think we have to bring a real understanding of the tactical animism of our ancestors. The tactical animism, not this magical manifestation bullshit that we're so inundated with in the West, this consumeristic form of animism. No, I'm talking about the animism that is like super basic, because if you don't have it, if the people in Palestine right now, they are sacrificing their blood and their lives in a grand ritual that they are not interested. They're not doing this consensually, but it's still a ritual. Okay? They have been deemed the scapegoat. And if you read about real Jewish history and ritual animism, you will see an entire thing about scapegoats and what that meant as a ritual animistic magical action, where they took one goat every year or every so often, and they imbued that goat with like all of their sins, and then like either killed it or exiled it into the forest. So this idea of scapegoat as a magical tool has become misused to a degree that is atrocious and ghostly. Okay, and we have to understand that what we're seeing today is a distorted byproduct of what our ancestors used to do to try to survive. It's an extremely distorted byproduct of all this stuff, right? And so we have to understand that if they're going to use our collective technology in such a horrifying way in order to turn people into more and more ghosts and to essentially dominate the universe or the world and try to, just narc out constantly. If they're going to use animism to do that, even though they don't call it animism, it's still a form of ritual magic, then we have to, at least, at the very least, reclaim the small pieces of ritual magic that could transition ourselves well through this dark road. My alarm keeps going off. Sorry about that. It'll happen like every 9 minutes. Unfortunately, there'll be a little glitch. So on our way through and onto towards death, however that occurs for us, we're going to need to make some accommodations along the way. And whether you die by old age or disease, or whether you're bombed into oblivion by an imperialist fascist state, death is still the place we're all going. So let's not pretend that we're going to somehow become immortal human beings on the other side of this. Our souls may or may not be immortal, but our bodies definitely are not. They're definitely not designed that way. So that's the first one. That's the most important hexagram. And so if we were to travel correctly, be a good guest, make offerings and divinations along the way, if we were to actually deal with what's happened and what's happening, so the past and the present continually, churning together, what might we get to? And that's the second hexagram. So when the first and last lines of 56 change to their opposite, when yin changes to yang and yang changes to yin, we get 55, which is abundance, feng. So abundance is really great. I'll just go through it really quickly, but it doesn't have any changing lines because that's not how this divination works. But great offerings. The king makes offerings, no mourning, be like the sun at midday. So this is sort of like, if you're in tarot, it's like King of Wands or something. This kind of ultra benevolent leader who shines on everyone equally, like the sun at midday. And Feng says that abundance, real abundance, is essentially a matter of fate. And it is not something that an individual can accomplish on their own, as if they're somehow some kind of magical, intelligent billionaire, which we all know is a total lie. It's saying that in the right circumstances, with the right behaviors, with the right alliances, and with the right stars overhead, that abundance can flourish into such a thing called abundance, which is to say more than enough. And then what we do with that is we share it. We become generous like the sun at midday, and we make great offerings. So we're going from small offerings to great offerings. Notice that little shift. We're going from small offerings along the way because we're in a tight situation, and eventually something occurs that allows us to have so much more to give that we give a great offering. Okay? So just understand that a little bit, that there is a move from small offerings to great offerings, and that there is a move from being in this really troubling journey, wandering home, the lost soldier who has lost the war, and then through the kind of shifts of fate that we don't have much control over, that we would be able to partake in such an abundance that we could give great offerings. Okay? And that we could share everything that we've learned and everything that we've gained through what's happened. So I'll just read a few more things and then I'll get off for today. The image of Feng is the prosperity and abundance of a kind that is hard to imagine and even harder to acquire and maintain. When abundance like this occurs, we cannot pretend that this is the outcome of our personal talents or effort. Feng is, in that sense, mysterious, but we cannot stand still and mourn in awe, which is to say, be addicted to mourning, essentially grief-stricken addiction. Yeah. Instead, we should celebrate with a truly open heart, the king making offerings, and be generous like the sun at midday. This is favorable for all sorts of fruition. Publicity, egotism, and squandering will spoil the auspices. It is good for travel, funding the arts, or social welfare groups, fundraising, and investments. It is bad for extravagance or austerity. And the comment that my teacher makes is, Feng is about an enormous windfall, harvesting a bumper crop, or a fated reward that comes and goes naturally. It expresses the mysterious and fertile generosity of nature. The mention of astronomical and astrological influences in several of the lines indicates that success is a matter of fate, synchronicity with the cycles of time. Do not waste time feeling unworthy or claim the success is yours. Honor all cofactors and reward all co-workers. Celebration and generosity express abundance. So remember, this is saying what we could get to if we did the very hard work of the other hexagram. Lu means, this is the other hexagram, I'll just read everything. Lu, the sojourner. Lu means a brush fire and represents a temporary lodger or wanderer. It describes a situation of being footloose, exiled, unattached, and wandering along the uneven road of fate. The lines tell the story of a vassal or general who makes his way home through enemy territory after losing a battle. Lu, sojourner, says much about the strength of tribal identity and allies and the courage and confidence it provides to make the difficult journey home. Small offering rituals and divination are performed along the way to seek guidance. This is favorable for small accomplishments and temporary appeasement, but inauspicious generally. Discretion is vital in whatever you do. It is good for short journeys, experimentation, learning, and being a guest. It is bad for acquiring wealth, lawsuits, security, or marriage. And the comment that my teacher makes is, it is clear that the sojourner is considered generally unfortunate in the Zhou-Yi, which is the book, the Zhou-Yi. Here, the traveler is homeless due to war. He is a dutiful officer making his way back to his prince, his home. He is not an idle tourist. The situation is about hardship, but with a hint of a spiritual quest. The Confucian commentators dwell on the importance of a traveler or a guest following the manners and customs of foreign places. But I think this is really not the main point. Liu implies that human beings are at their best when they are at home, in quotation marks, in a place of close and consistent association with their own kind, tribal ancestors. When human beings are forced by fate to wander alone, they lose their spiritual bearings, not just their manners and property. So while this might seem like you need to make some kind of pilgrimage to your ancestral homeland, I think that that would be another aspect of the Western consumerist mind trying to solve maybe an unsolvable issue. I'm not saying you shouldn't do that, but I'm really quite questioning. Like for me, where am I going to go? Like as a mixed person, where the fuck do I go that anyone would accept me? The answer is fucking nowhere, okay? So as a mixed person doing this kind of work, talking about ancestors, I have to be very clear here that burdening the current people living in the place that you might have come from once upon a time is not necessarily a good idea, okay? It might be a good idea for an individual, but I don't think it's a general good. The issues that we're facing upon globalization, colonization, diaspora are so extreme now that we need to really be careful about how we think we're going to solve our homelessness or unbelonging problem. Whether you're white, black, in between, I don't care. It's not the point. I think the point more is that to align with your tribal ancestors is a deeply intense spiritual practice that requires you to sacrifice things along the way in order to feel a sense of real solidarity so that you can then make great offerings. Okay? And many of us might not ever get to make great offerings in a certain kind of way because we're going to be just fucking bombed or killed by fucking police or something. So I think you have to really understand the spiritual dimensions of what this kind of wisdom is talking about. It may feel good to be around people that look like you, and I know that that's a real thing and it can really do something for the soul. But I also think that for so many people, they're not going to have that opportunity. So how do you still really have solidarity with your so-called tribal ancestors in a way that allows you to deal with what is going on in this world? That's a very difficult question. I don't have an answer for it. All I can say is that as a mixed person who's sick and can't go back home anywhere, I'm just choosing to live where I can survive and have some peace of mind and also be as generous as possible. The sicker I get, the less possible, and yet I will still make small offerings along the way. Currently, these kinds of Instagram lives are a version of a small offering. I'm trying to do what I can with what I've learned to help as many people as possible while I'm alive. I don't expect a reward for it, and this is difficult because it would be very nice to have abundance flowing into my bank account, which is not true. And when I do my practices, I still have to figure out what am I able to do today in alignment with the wisdom that I have been given. Because it's not my wisdom, it is the wisdom of the ancestors that was latent inside of me that I had to learn how to incubate over the course of my life. And I was really lucky that I was able to survive long enough to feel some sense of that wisdom being bigger than my ego, being bigger than my personality. It took very many years to get there. And I could sit here and whine about that, or I could get on with it. Okay? And I think that when you're still at the sort of beginning of your process and you feel like you're homeless and all alone, like this soldier wandering, it's very easy to start to become a whiner. It's very easy to just be a whiny asshole. And I want you to understand that no matter where you are on your path, you can still make small offerings. You can still be a good guest. You can still critically think and critically feel and critically sense and critically perceive the conditions of your life and your surroundings. Okay? This is not some kind of bypass methodology. Okay? It's like tactical animism. Everything has a spirit. You are made of multiple spirits. You are a combination of spirits. To believe that you are a singular entity separate from some other singular entities is the great disease of Western ideology. And the more that we can align to wisdom traditions that were a little bit older than our 21st century cult of individualism, the more we might feel connected to those ancestors who lived this way naturally without having to have these conversations like we have to have today. So that's my little rant on how to, divination and collectivism, and how we should maybe walk through this valley of death together. Even though it's the so-called Western holidays and we're going to be giving people gifts, maybe take a fucking second to give some gifts to some other beings. Okay? Not just the people you think you love or you think love you and it's all some great family time. Yeah, that's fine. But maybe there are other beings that allow you to have whatever level of clarity and ignorance you're currently in. Whatever dream you're currently battling, there are beings that are allowing you to have that. And even if you don't like what you're going through, you have to look at it like it is a gift. It is a challenging gift, maybe. Okay? Maybe it's a very challenging gift, but it is a gift. You have to understand that the forces that have aligned to sort of give you your particular situation, as atrocious as it might be, those beings need a little bit of respect and acknowledgement. And maybe in return, they'll give you a hint as to how to deal with your particular problem. Okay? So, thank you all so much for listening. Blessings to all beings. May this be of merit to all beings for the liberation of all beings. Free Palestine, free Sudan, free the Congo, free Turtle Island, free every fucking place, because we may not see it in our lifetime. We may get trampled on by the boots of fascism. But it is inevitable. It is inevitable that empire will end. Because empire is not stronger than the cycle of time. It is not stronger than the cycles of yin and yang. It is not a forever thing. Empire will not last. It will devour itself. And along the way, it will devour many of us. That is just part of how it works. If, when we die, however we die, our bodies can actually be a blessing, a blood sacrifice for revolution and for liberation, that might be our contribution as we die. But until then, let's get to work. All right, blessings.